The night I almost drowned in my own backyard, the last person I expected to save me was the woman who lived next door. Not because she didn't care about me, but because, until that night, we had barely exchanged more than a handful of polite greetings. She was the kind of neighbor who smiled when she collected her mail, waved from across the fence, and disappeared behind her front door before anyone could ask how she was doing. I was the same way. After losing my wife 2 years earlier, I had become an expert at keeping people at a comfortable distance. But at 10:43 on a cold Friday night, just as I lowered myself into the hot tub I had bought to escape the loneliness of my house, someone knocked hard on my back door. When I opened it, there stood my neighbor, Emma, wrapped in a simple robe, her hair messy from sleep and worry written across her face. She looked past me toward the backyard and said she had seen the light come on and noticed I was alone. Then she told me something I would never forget: she wasn't going to let me get into that hot tub by myself. If you believe kindness can find us even when we have stopped looking for it, take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs a second chance, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about kindness, hope, and unexpected connections. My name is Daniel, and before that night, I would have told you that I didn't need anyone. I had a small house at the end of a quiet suburban street, a reliable job, a refrigerator full of food I barely cooked, and a backyard that had slowly become more neglected every season. My wife, Claire, had loved that backyard. She planted lavender along the fence and kept little solar lights beneath the trees. After she died, I stopped turning those lights on. I couldn't stand seeing reminders of the life we had planned but never got to finish. The hardest part wasn't waking up alone. It was coming home after work and instinctively expecting someone to ask how my day had gone, only to remember there was nobody waiting. So I built walls. I answered messages late. I declined invitations. I convinced myself that solitude was strength. Emma moved into the house next door about 8 months after Claire died. She was probably in her early 30s, though I never asked. She worked from home, kept a small garden, and sometimes sat on her porch with a cup of tea while reading. There was something peaceful about her, but I avoided getting too close. One afternoon, she caught me struggling with a broken fence panel and offered to help. I thanked her and said I had it handled. The truth was that I didn't want help. I wanted to prove to myself that I could still handle everything. She smiled as though she understood and walked away without pushing. Months passed. Then, one evening, I finally did something I hadn't done in years. I bought myself something simply because I thought I deserved a little comfort. It was a small outdoor hot tub, nothing luxurious, but enough for one person. I imagined sitting beneath the stars with the warm water around me, letting the tension drain from my shoulders. When it arrived, I installed it myself, even though my back protested every time I lifted something heavy. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want anyone making a big deal out of it. That Friday had been especially difficult. It was Claire's birthday. I had spent the entire day pretending I was fine, answering emails and smiling at coworkers while carrying a sadness I couldn't explain. When I got home, I found an old photograph of Claire tucked inside a drawer. She was standing beside me at the beach, laughing because the wind had blown her hair across her face. I sat on the kitchen floor for almost an hour holding that picture. Eventually, I decided I needed to stop thinking. I went outside, switched on the hot tub, and watched steam rise into the freezing night. I didn't realize how exhausted I was until I stepped into the water. The warmth felt almost medicinal. For the first few minutes, I simply closed my eyes and listened to the wind moving through the trees. Then I reached for my phone, saw dozens of messages I had ignored over the past month, and realized something that frightened me. I couldn't remember the last time I had genuinely talked to another person about how I felt. I leaned back. The world became quiet. And then I slipped. It happened so quickly that I didn't even understand what had happened. My shoulder struck the side of the tub, my head went beneath the water, and panic exploded through me. I tried to push myself upward, but my arm had twisted awkwardly and the pain was blinding. For several seconds, all I could hear was the violent pounding of my own heart beneath the water. I managed to surface, gasping, but my legs felt weak and my vision blurred. That's when I heard the knocking. At first, I thought I imagined it. Then it came again, louder. I forced myself out of the hot tub and stumbled toward the back door. When I opened it, Emma stood there in her robe, barefoot on the cold patio. Her expression changed the moment she saw me. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. She simply stepped forward, grabbed my arm, and helped me sit down. Later, I learned that she had been awake because she was making tea. She had looked outside and noticed the unusual movement in my backyard. She saw me fall and immediately came over. She stayed beside me until my breathing slowed. She brought me a blanket, checked my shoulder, and insisted that I sit somewhere safe. I tried to make a joke about embarrassing myself, but she didn't laugh. Instead, she looked directly at me with the kind of concern people usually reserve for family. Then she told me she knew I was hurting. Not physically. She said she had seen it for months. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to tell her she was mistaken. But something inside me broke before the words could come out. I admitted that Claire's birthday had been that day. I admitted that I had been pretending I was okay. I admitted that the hot tub wasn't really about relaxation. It was about finding somewhere quiet enough to stop feeling the emptiness for a little while. Emma listened. She didn't tell me that everything would be fine. She didn't say Claire was in a better place. She didn't give me one of those perfect sentences people use when they don't know what else to say. She simply stayed. That was the beginning. Over the following weeks, Emma started checking on me, but never in a way that made me feel helpless. Sometimes she left a container of soup on my porch. Sometimes she asked if I wanted to walk around the neighborhood. Sometimes we sat on opposite sides of the fence and talked about completely ordinary things. She told me about her childhood, her terrible cooking skills, and her habit of buying books faster than she could read them. I told her about Claire, but slowly. For the first time in years, I was saying my wife's name without feeling as though I was drowning. One Saturday morning, Emma asked me to help her repair a garden bench. I almost said no out of habit. Instead, I picked up my tools and walked next door. We spent 3 hours fixing that bench. It wasn't a life-changing event. No music played. No dramatic revelation happened. We simply worked, laughed when we made mistakes, and drank terrible coffee afterward. Yet when I returned home, I realized something important. My house didn't feel quite as empty anymore. Months later, Emma and I had become close friends. She still respected my grief, and I respected the things she never talked about. Eventually, she told me that she had moved to the neighborhood after losing her mother. She had spent years caring for her, and after her death, Emma had felt completely lost. She had learned something during that time: people rarely need someone to fix them. They need someone willing to sit beside them while they find their own way back. I thought about that often. The hot tub remained in my backyard, but I stopped using it alone. Sometimes Emma joined me, fully dressed in warm clothes, with a mug of tea in her hands. We talked about life, regrets, dreams, and all the strange ways people survive difficult seasons. There was nothing dramatic about those evenings. That was what made them beautiful. One spring morning, I finally turned on the little solar lights Claire had planted years earlier. I expected guilt to crush me. Instead, I felt peace. The lights glowed softly beneath the lavender, and for the first time, remembering Claire didn't feel like losing her all over again. It felt like honoring the life we had shared. A year after the night Emma knocked on my door, I found her sitting on my porch holding a small box. Inside was a wooden plaque she had made herself. It said, simply, "Nobody should have to carry everything alone." I stared at it for a long time. Then I hugged her. Not because she had saved me from the hot tub that night, but because she had reminded me that being strong didn't mean shutting everyone out. Sometimes strength meant opening the door when someone knocked. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who may be quietly struggling, and subscribe to the channel. You never know when a simple act of kindness might become the reason someone believes tomorrow is worth reaching. And before the story ends, I want you to leave a comment with this sentence: kindness can knock when hope is silent. Maybe someone reading your comment tonight needs those words more than you know. Years later, I still remember that cold Friday night. I remember the steam rising from the water, the photograph of Claire sitting on the kitchen counter, and the sound of Emma knocking on my door. But most of all, I remember what happened after I opened it. I thought she had come to keep me from getting into a hot tub alone. The truth was, she had come to make sure I didn't keep going through life alone. And sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't the one who arrives with grand promises or perfect answers. Sometimes, they're simply the person who notices your light is still on, walks across the cold night, and knocks.